I never imagined that one decision, one seemingly harmless agreement, would change everything about me. How I looked, how I felt, how people saw me, even how I saw myself. If you had asked me a year ago who I was, I would have told you I was just a regular guy, ordinary in almost every way. Not particularly bold, not particularly outgoing, just drifting through my days with little to set me apart. But then she entered my life, and suddenly the person I thought I was began to peel away, layer by layer, until what remained was someone unrecognizable to me, yet strangely more authentic than I ever dared to admit. Her name was Lila. She wasn't just confident. She had that magnetic type of confidence that could pull anyone into her orbit. She didn't simply command attention, she owned it, as if every room she entered had been waiting just for her. And when she turned that sharp, knowing gaze on me, I felt stripped bare, as if she saw every weakness, every insecurity I tried to hide. Maybe that's why I couldn't say no to her. Maybe that's why when she made a suggestion that sounded ridiculous at first, I found myself nodding along, unable to resist. Started with a joke. We were sitting together, talking late into the night, when she tilted her head and said, "You know, you've got a face that could pull off a softer look. You'd make a cute femboy if you tried." She laughed, waiting for me to dismiss the idea, but instead of laughing back I froze. Something about her words lodged itself inside me, deeper than I expected. I should have brushed it off. But instead, curiosity sparked in my chest. "Yeah, right," I said, forcing a chuckle. "I don't think so." But Lila leaned closer, her voice lowering just enough to make my skin tingle. "Don't underestimate yourself. You'd be surprised what a little change can do. All it takes is trust. Do you trust me?" The way she asked that question, it wasn't really a question at all. It was a challenge, a dare wrapped in warmth. And I foolishly said yes. That was the night it began. At first it was simple, just her testing boundaries, giving me little dares. "Try this hoodie," she'd say, handing me something in pastel pink that I never would have picked for myself. "Let me shape your eyebrows just a little, no one will even notice," she'd insist, and before I knew it, the mirror showed a face with softer, sharper lines than I remembered. It was subtle, gradual, never enough to shock me all at once, but always enough to keep me wondering. And then came the clothes. She had a way of making it feel natural, like it wasn't a big deal. "This isn't girly," she'd say as she handed me skinny jeans that hugged tighter than anything I owned. "This isn't feminine, it's just aesthetic," she'd insist while pulling a striped crop top over my head. And when I caught sight of myself, I didn't look like a girl, but I didn't quite look like the boy I thought I was either. Somewhere in between, something blurred, and that blur both unsettled me and fascinated me. The first real turning point came when she put makeup on me. I had resisted, joking about how ridiculous I'd look, but Lila didn't take no for an answer. She sat me down under the glow of her vanity mirror, her hands gentle but firm, her eyes gleaming with mischief as she brushed foundation across my skin, softened my lips with gloss, and lined my eyes with a precision that left me staring at myself in disbelief. The face in the mirror was still mine, but polished, refined, touched with something almost ethereal. I remember whispering, "That's not me." And she whispered back, "It could be." Something inside me cracked open that night. For the first time, I wasn't just playing along with her dares. I was curious. I leaned in closer to the mirror, tracing the edge of the eyeliner, brushing my fingers across my lips, wondering if I had been hiding something all along without realizing it. But curiosity is dangerous. Because once you taste the possibility of change, once you let yourself imagine what could be, it's impossible to go back to who you were before. And Lila knew it. She saw the flicker in my eyes, the way I lingered on my reflection, and she smiled that knowing smile. She wasn't just transforming me for fun anymore. She was pulling me deeper, step by step, into a version of myself I didn't yet understand. I didn't realize then just how far she would go. I didn't realize just how much of myself I would lose. Or maybe how much I would gain. All I knew was that the boy who had laughed off her first joke was fading, and in his place, someone softer, stranger, and yet strangely alive was beginning to emerge. And the most dangerous part, I couldn't decide if I wanted to stop it. The next few weeks blurred together, each day pulling me further from the person I thought I was. What began as silly dares turned into habits. Lila was clever. She never pushed too hard, never made it feel like a demand. Instead, she planted little seeds, suggestions that settled in my head until I was the one reaching for the changes. "Those skinny jeans suit you better than your old ones," she'd remark casually, and suddenly my old clothes felt clumsy and awkward. "You should keep your nails neat," she'd add with a smile, and before I realized it, I was filing them down, shaping them delicately. Every step seemed harmless by itself, but together they were building something new. It wasn't long before I noticed the reactions from others. My friends would squint at me as if something was different but couldn't quite place it. My classmates whispered when I passed by, half amused, half intrigued. Even strangers looked twice, their gazes lingering longer than I was used to. At first it made me nervous, but then, strangely, I began to enjoy it. Attention had never been something I received much of before. Now it followed me, as though my existence had become interesting. Lila loved to watch me wrestle with those feelings. She'd sit across from me, eyes sparkling with amusement, as I hesitated before trying on something new. "You like it," she'd tease whenever my denial sounded too weak. "Don't pretend otherwise. I can see it in your face." One Saturday, she showed up at my door with a shopping bag in hand. "I brought you something," she said, her grin wide and wicked. Inside was a soft, oversized sweater, lavender, thin, and cropped just enough to show a sliver of skin if I lifted my arms. Alongside it were shorts so small they could barely pass as unisex. My face flushed instantly. "You're joking," I said. But she just leaned against the wall, folding her arms. "Am I? Try it on." I told myself I'd refuse, that I'd stand my ground this time. Yet minutes later, there I was in front of her mirror, tugging at the hem of the sweater, my legs exposed in a way that felt alarmingly vulnerable. Lila circled me slowly, her eyes roaming, calculating, like an artist evaluating her canvas. "You look perfect," she said finally, and her words sent a shiver through me. Perfect. The word echoed in my head long after she left that night. It should have been just dress up, just temporary. But Lila wasn't satisfied with surface changes. She began to weave her influence deeper. She encouraged me to adjust the way I walked, smoothing out my steps. She teased me into softening my gestures, tilting my head when I listened, brushing my hair out of my face with absent-minded grace. These weren't just clothes anymore. This was behavior, identity, the small unspoken things that people notice but can't quite explain. I started to feel the line blur. The scariest part wasn't the fear of being caught or judged, or even losing my old self. The scariest part was the thrill. I liked the feeling of standing in front of the mirror and not fully recognizing who I was. I liked the way my reflection seemed to contain secrets no one else knew. And most of all, I liked the way Lila looked at me, as though she had unlocked something hidden inside me, and only she understood it. But with thrill comes doubt. Late at night when I lay in bed, I questioned what was happening. Was this really me? Was Lila reshaping me into someone I was never meant to be? Or was she simply peeling away the masks I had always worn, revealing something that had been buried deep all along? The questions haunted me, but by day I drowned them out with her voice, her presence, her certainty. And then came the first real test. One evening, she handed me a small box, neatly wrapped in silver paper. My heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what I'd find. Inside was a choker, a thin black ribbon with a tiny silver heart pendant dangling at the center. "Wear it," she said simply. I hesitated. Jewelry felt different from clothes, more intimate, more permanent. A choker wasn't just fashion, it was a statement, a symbol of something I wasn't sure I was ready to claim. "Lila," I started, but she stepped closer, lifting the ribbon in her hands. "Shoot, trust me," she whispered. When she fastened it around my neck, I felt the cool metal of the pendant rest against my skin. My reflection in the mirror looked back at me, softer, more delicate, undeniably different. That night I didn't take it off. It was just a piece of jewelry, but it felt like something more, A mark of hers, a declaration that I was no longer walking the path I once knew. And as much as it terrified me, I couldn't help but want to see what she would do next. Because I knew now, deep down, that she wasn't going to stop. And maybe, neither was I. By the time a month had passed, I had stopped keeping track of where the old me ended and where this new version began. Every mirror in the house became both my enemy and my confidant. I couldn't stop myself from checking, from lingering, from tilting my head at angles I had never bothered to notice before. My reflection was no longer static. It changed depending on what Lila had me try, and with every change it whispered possibilities I hadn't dared to consider. The choker stayed on. At first, I told myself it was because I didn't want to disappoint her, that I could always take it off later. But days stretched into weeks, and it became less of an accessory and more of a second skin. I'd catch myself brushing my fingers against the pendant absent-mindedly, almost like a habit, almost like reassurance. Lila noticed, of course. She noticed everything. One afternoon, as I sat nervously on her bed, she pulled open her closet and began tossing clothes onto the sheets beside me. Shirts, tops that shimmered with sequins, stockings, things that I would have sworn belonged to a different world entirely. "Too much," I muttered, my throat dry. She turned and studied me, one eyebrow arched. "Too much for you. Or too much for the version of you you're trying to protect?" I didn't answer because I didn't know the answer myself. She held up a pleated skirt, black with white trim, and stepped toward me. "Stand up," she said softly. Every nerve in my body screamed to refuse, but my legs obeyed. The skirt slid around my waist, the fabric so light it was almost mocking. She adjusted it carefully, then stepped back, her eyes scanning me like a sculptor evaluating her creation. "Spin," she instructed. I turned slowly, awkwardly, but when I faced the mirror again, something inside me jolted. I didn't look ridiculous. I didn't look like a joke. I looked possible, and that terrified me. I must have stared too long because Lila came to stand behind me, her hands resting gently on my shoulders. Our eyes met in the glass. "You see it now, don't you?" she whispered. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to push it away. But my lips parted and no words came. From that day on, Lila became relentless in her encouragement. We ventured out cautiously at first. Coffee shops, quiet parks, late-night walks when the streets were mostly empty. At first, my heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone around me could hear it. Every glance felt like a spotlight, every whisper like it was directed at me. But Lila walked beside me without a flicker of fear, her hand brushing mine in reassurance. "Confidence sells the story," she said one evening as we strolled down a dimly lit street. "If you believe it, they will too." And she was right. I noticed it over time. The longer I held my head high, the less people seemed to care. Some stared, yes, but most looked once and moved on. The world didn't collapse around me. The sky didn't fall. Life simply continued. But inside, things were far from simple. I started avoiding old friends, dodging their texts and skipping hangouts. I didn't know how to explain what was happening, and I wasn't ready for their reactions. At home, I became secretive, locking my door more often, hiding away the new clothes, the makeup, the growing collection of accessories that Lila kept sneaking into my life. My parents noticed something was off, but they chalked it up to phases and stress, and I let them believe it. The truth was harder to face. Because late at night, when I stood alone in front of the mirror, I didn't always recognize myself anymore. Sometimes I felt exhilarated, like I had discovered a part of me I never knew existed. Other times I felt like I was watching myself slip away, replaced by someone I didn't fully understand. The push and pull between those feelings kept me awake, my mind spinning in circles. Lila, however, had no doubts. She looked at me as though everything was unfolding exactly the way it was meant to. And her certainty was infectious. When my courage faltered, her voice anchored me. When fear crept in, her laughter dissolved it. One night, as I sat in her room removing eyeliner that had smudged after hours of wear, she asked me suddenly, "Do you realize how far you've come?" I froze, cotton pad in hand, and glanced at her. What do you mean? She smiled softly, almost tenderly. The boy I met wouldn't have dared to even try on a pastel hoodie. Now look at you. You've been outside, you've embraced it, you're glowing. I turned back to the mirror, studying the faint traces of makeup left on my skin, the choker still gleaming at my throat, the way my features seemed sharper, smoother, less bound to the image I once clung to. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted quietly. Lila leaned closer, her voice a murmur against my ear. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you're not meant to be who you thought you were. Maybe you're meant to be this. Her words sent a chill down my spine, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. And as I lay in bed later that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something undeniable. She was right. I couldn't go back. Even if I wanted to, even if I tried, the old me was already fading into memory. And whatever lay ahead, whatever she had planned, whatever I was becoming, there was no stopping it now. The day it all changed was colder than I expected. The wind carried a sharpness that bit at my skin, but the chill wasn't what had my stomach twisted. It was what Lila had planned. She didn't tell me until that morning. "We're going out," she said casually, tossing a bag onto my bed. I unzipped it, my heart pounding. Inside were clothes I had only worn in the safety of her room. Pleated skirt, cropped cardigan, stockings. My throat tightened. "You can't be serious," I muttered, clutching the fabric as though it might burn me. But she only smiled, that same smile that had been unraveling me piece by piece since this all began. "I'm very serious. You've been hiding behind closed doors long enough. It's time to live it." I shook my head. "People will stare. They'll laugh. They'll know." Her hand landed on mine, firm but gentle. "Let them. You don't need to be invisible anymore. You've been walking the edge for weeks. Either you step forward, or you'll always wonder what could have been." Her words pierced me, and before I could argue, she was already helping me dress. The cardigan slid over my shoulders, soft and warm. The skirt rested lightly around my waist. Stockings clung to my legs, unfamiliar yet fitting. By the time she was done, I hardly dared to look in the mirror. When I finally did, my knees weakened. The reflection staring back was both alien and intimate, like meeting a long-lost version of myself who had been waiting patiently to emerge. My cheeks burned, my hands trembled, but a strange calm settled beneath the nerves. "Beautiful," Lila whispered, standing behind me. The word struck something deep inside me. For so long I had been average, forgettable, just another face in the crowd. Now, hearing her say it, I felt a fragile sense of worth take root. We stepped outside together, and every instinct screamed at me to run back indoors. The world felt too bright, too exposed. Each passerby was a threat, each glance a spotlight. My chest tightened with panic until Lila's hand brushed mine. "Breathe," she said softly. "Walk with me." So I did. At first, the stares burned. I imagined every whisper was about me, every laugh aimed in my direction. But then something shifted. Some people glanced and looked away. Others didn't notice at all. And a few smiled. Not cruelly, not mockingly. Just smiled. As if they saw me, truly saw me, and accepted it without question. By the time we reached the cafe, my panic had dulled into a strange, buoyant energy. We sat at a small table by the window, sipping lattes while Lila watched me with that infuriatingly knowing expression. "You're glowing," she teased. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't hide the grin tugging at my lips. "I feel ridiculous. Ridiculously perfect," she corrected. For the first time I didn't argue. But the high didn't last forever. That night, back in my room, I stared at the clothes folded neatly on my chair. The thrill of the day warred with the terror of what it meant. My life had always been safe, predictable, hidden. Now it was unraveling into something louder, brighter, riskier. And yet, I couldn't stop. Over the next weeks, Lila pushed further. She introduced me to skincare routines, had me experiment with makeup on my own, and even coaxed me into growing my hair out, insisting it framed my face better with each passing week. The more I leaned into it, the more natural it felt. The more natural it felt, the harder it became to imagine going back. But it wasn't just about appearances anymore. My voice softened without me realizing. My movements grew gentler, my laughter higher. It wasn't an act. It was becoming instinctive, unconscious. The lines between choice and change blurred until I no longer knew whether I was performing or simply evolving. And then came the night she asked me the question that shattered whatever pieces of certainty I had left. We were sitting in her room, the glow of the vanity mirror bathing us in soft light. I had just finished applying mascara under her guidance, my lashes long and delicate, when she tilted her head and asked, "Do you still think of yourself as the same person you were before?" I froze, the wand trembling in my hand. "Of course I do. I'm still me." Her smile was gentle, almost sad. "Are you?" I wanted to protest, to insist that underneath all of this, nothing had changed. But the words caught in my throat. Because deep down I knew she was right. I didn't feel like the same person. Not anymore. The old me was fading, slipping away like a shadow at sunset. And in its place, someone new was stepping into the light. Someone I didn't fully understand yet, but who felt undeniably real. That night, lying awake, I clutched the pendant of the choker and whispered the truth I had been avoiding for weeks. I don't know who I am anymore. And for the first time, instead of fear, the words filled me with something else. Possibility. The weeks that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Every day I woke up, looked in the mirror, and wondered which version of me I'd see staring back. Some mornings it was the boy I used to know, hair messy, eyes heavy, clinging desperately to the fragments of normalcy that still remained. Other mornings it was someone else entirely. Softer, sharper, more intentional, a reflection sculpted by Lila's steady hand and my own growing obsession with the image she'd planted in my mind. The strangest part was how natural it had begun to feel. Brushing on foundation no longer made me panic. It was just part of my routine. Slipping into fitted jeans or a cropped hoodie didn't feel like dress up anymore. It felt like choosing to be comfortable in my own skin. Even my voice. God, even my voice was changing without me realizing. Softer when I spoke, lighter when I laughed, almost unrecognizable when compared to old videos of myself. I should have been terrified. And I was. But mixed with that terror was something intoxicating. Freedom. Lila noticed before I did. She always did. One night, as I paced nervously in her room, she leaned against the wall with her arms folded, studying me the way she always did. "You're different," she said simply. Froze. Different how? Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Different in the way you carry yourself. You don't fight it anymore. You don't resist. You're embracing it. I wanted to deny it, but the truth was already burning in my chest. I had stopped fighting. Somewhere along the way, resistance had turned into curiosity, curiosity into acceptance, and acceptance into something dangerously close to pride. But pride comes with consequences. One evening, I made the mistake of stepping out alone. I told myself it would be fine. A short walk to clear my head, nothing more. I wore a simple outfit. A soft sweater, leggings, the ever-present choker. Nothing too bold. Nothing too loud. At first, it felt liberating, walking under the streetlights without Lila at my side. But then the whispers came. A group of strangers at the corner. Their laughter sharp and cruel, cutting through the fragile bubble of confidence I had built. My chest tightened, my legs shook, and I hurried past, pretending not to hear, but every syllable stuck like glass in my skin. When I returned to my room that night, I ripped the choker off and tossed it across the floor, my reflection glaring back at me with accusing eyes. "What am I doing?" I whispered, the walls swallowing the sound. "Who am I trying to be?" The old me felt so far away, unreachable, like a fading dream. And yet the new me still felt fragile, unsteady, like a mask that could shatter at any moment. I curled into bed, pulling the blanket over my head, wishing for silence, wishing for answers. The next day, Lila found me quieter than usual, withdrawn, avoiding her gaze. She didn't push at first. She simply sat beside me, her presence calm, steady. After a long silence, she picked up the choker from where I had dropped it, turning it slowly in her hands. "Did someone hurt you?" she asked gently. I swallowed hard. "They laughed. There. They saw me, and they laughed." Her eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "And what did you expect? Change scares people. They mock what they don't understand. But tell me this. Did their laughter change how you felt when you looked in the mirror before you left?" I hesitated, my throat tight. "No. I liked how I looked." "Exactly," she said, placing the choker back in my hands. "Then why give their words more power than your own truth?" I stared down at the ribbon, the tiny heart pendant glinting in the light. My fingers trembled, but slowly, almost reluctantly, I fastened it around my neck again. Lila smiled, not triumphantly, but warmly. "That's the you I see. That's the you I believe in." Her faith in me was unshakable, and it was contagious. Where my doubt grew heavy, her certainty carried me forward. And in that moment, I realized something that sent a chill through me. It wasn't just that she was changing me. It was that I wanted to be changed. From then on, I stopped pretending this was temporary. I stopped telling myself it was just a game or a phase or something I could shrug off when it became inconvenient. No, I leaned into it. Harder than ever before. I learned makeup techniques on my own, experimenting late into the night. I practiced softer movements, adjusted my posture, refined my voice, not because Lila told me to, but because I wanted to see how far I could go. And the further I went, the more I felt a dangerous truth sinking in. The boy I used to be was gone. Not slipping. Not fading. And in his place, something new was blooming. Something fragile. Something beautiful. Something that terrified me more than anything else had ever terrified me. But deep down I knew Lila was right. There was no going back. By the time winter settled in, I had stopped recognizing the boy in old photos. Sometimes, when scrolling through my phone late at night, I'd stumble across an old selfie or a candid shot, and it would feel like looking at a stranger. His jawline was harsher, his hair cropped short, his clothes plain and oversized. His smile was different too. Tighter, uncertain, like someone who wanted to disappear into the background. I stared at those photos with a strange mix of grief and detachment. Was that really me? Did I miss him? Or was I relieved to watch him vanish, piece by piece, replaced by this new reflection I had grown addicted to? Lila noticed the way I lingered on those pictures. She always noticed. One evening, she snatched the phone from my hands and tossed it onto the bed. "Stop looking backward," she said sharply. "That's not who you are anymore." Her tone stung. "But it's who I was," I muttered. "Doesn't that matter?" She stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "What matters is who you are now. And right now, you're more alive than I've ever seen you. Don't dishonor that by clinging to ghosts." Her words silenced me, but they didn't erase the ache in my chest. The ache grew heavier when my family began to notice. My mother's eyes lingered too long when I came down for breakfast, her brow furrowing at the softer edges of my appearance. My father made offhand remarks about my phase, his tone dripping with forced humor that barely masked discomfort. I laughed along, pretending not to care, but every word stuck to me like burrs I couldn't shake off. One night, alone in my room, I broke. I tore off the cardigan, scrubbed the makeup from my face, yanked the choker away from my neck, and threw everything into a drawer. My chest heaved with sobs I hadn't planned, tears blurring my vision until the mirror became a smear of shapes and shadows. "I can't do this," I whispered to myself. "I can't keep doing this." The drawer stayed closed for 3 days. I went back to my old clothes, my old posture, my old voice. I walked through the world pretending to be the person I used to be. But it felt wrong, like wearing an old costume that no longer fit. My skin itched with the absence of eyeliner. My throat tightened every time I spoke in the deeper register I had forced back. The laughter of my old friends rang hollow in my ears. On the 4th day, Lila stormed into my room without warning. Her eyes swept over me, hoodie, jeans, bare neck, and for the first time since I had met her, her smile faded. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly, too quietly. I'm done, I said, my voice shaking. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have let it go this far. She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tight. Then, to my surprise, she sat down on the edge of my bed and lowered her head into her hands. Do you really believe that? She murmured. The silence between us stretched until I couldn't bear it. My throat burned as I whispered, I don't know who I am anymore, Lila. I feel like I've lost myself. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes glistening, not with anger but with something softer, something raw. You haven't lost yourself. You found yourself. You just don't have the courage to admit it yet. Her words sliced through me. I wanted to deny them, to push her away, but my heart betrayed me. Deep down I knew she was right. The old me didn't feel real anymore. He felt like a memory I had been forced to wear, a role I had been cast in before I ever had a choice. And this new version, this delicate, trembling, half-formed self, felt more authentic than anything I had ever known. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I buried my face in my hands. What if people never accept me? What if I never accept me? Lila slid closer, pulling my hands away from my face. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. Listen to me. You don't need everyone to accept you. You don't even need me to accept you. You need to accept yourself. Because the truth is, you've already crossed the line. You've already become someone new. The only question left is whether you're brave enough to embrace it. I couldn't answer. My chest rose and fell with jagged breaths, my mind spinning with fear, hope, and 1,000 unspoken doubts. That night after she left, I opened the drawer again. My hands shook as I pulled out the choker, the cardigan, the eyeliner. Piece by piece I put them back on. And when I looked in the mirror, the reflection staring back at me felt right. Terrifyingly right. I whispered to the glass, my voice trembling but certain. I think this is who I am. And for the first time, saying it out loud didn't scare me. Set me free. Spring came again, the kind of spring that wakes up the world with bursts of color. The first time I stepped outside in a skirt without trembling, I remember noticing how the cherry blossoms had begun to fall, scattering like pink confetti on the sidewalk. For a moment, I felt like the universe itself was celebrating me, wrapping me in its quiet approval. It wasn't easy. Every day still carried its own battles, whispers behind my back, stares that lingered too long, questions I didn't always have the strength to answer. But I wasn't hiding anymore. Each morning when I stood in front of the mirror, I chose myself. And that choice grew easier with time. Lila stood by me through it all. She wasn't just the girl who nudged me into eyeliner or coaxed me into lace. She was the one who refused to let me collapse when the weight felt unbearable. She saw me long before I saw myself. And while there were days I resented her for pushing me so far, I eventually understood she hadn't been shaping me into something I wasn't. She had only peeled away the layers I had buried myself under. The boy in those old photos had become a shadow. He lingered in the corners of memory, but he no longer defined me. When I looked in the mirror now, I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone fragile yet resilient, soft yet unyielding, someone who had walked through the fire of doubt and come out reshaped, reborn. One evening, Lila and I sat on the balcony of her apartment, legs tucked beneath us, sipping tea as the sun melted into the horizon. The city hummed below, indifferent and alive. "You've changed," she said, not as an accusation but as a gentle observation. I laughed softly. "Yeah, I know." She tilted her head, studying me. "Do you regret it?" The question lingered in the air. I thought about the tears, the fear, the nights I wished I could run away from it all. I thought about the weight of silence at family dinners, the loneliness that sometimes crept in when I realized how different I had become. But then I thought about the freedom, the way my heart no longer twisted every time I dressed myself in clothes that didn't feel like lies. I thought about the strange, fierce joy of catching my reflection and recognizing it. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. Not anymore." She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Good. Because I don't regret it either." We sat in silence after that, letting the night unfold around us. For once, silence wasn't heavy. It was comfortable like a blanket. Later, as I walked home, I caught sight of myself in a store window. My hair brushed softly against my cheek, my steps light, my reflection unmistakably mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wish I looked different. I didn't wish I was someone else. I whispered it under my breath, words carried away by the evening air. This is me. This is who I am. The world didn't stop. No one turned their head. But inside me something shifted, a final click like the last piece of a puzzle falling into place. And though the journey ahead was still uncertain, for the first time I wasn't afraid to walk it. Because she turned me into a femboy. And didn't stop there. She helped me turn into myself. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.